וכי נפשי אס השם.
Page 53 is one of those fascinating page, especially the second part of the page, dealing with a lot of agadata, stories. But the first part of the session, we're going to continue in halachot with animals, such as moving animals, carrying animals, the shvitat behemot, etc. Amar Shmuel, we are at the top of page 53, Shmuel said, והוא שקשורה לו מערב Shabbat. The seder cloth on the animal or the donkey, for example, it's set before Shabbat. So here we're dealing with a situation that the donkey feel cold, and you put something around the donkey like seder cloth to keep him warm. So it is prohibited to tie a saddle cloth on an animal on Shabbat because of the prohibition of riding an animal and using it. So basically, you maybe use the side of the animal, which in general is permitted, but the sages prohibited trying to the saddle one on Shabbat, and that's what Rabbeinu Yonah said. Now, here is a Rashi, and Tosfot brought it here. The Rashi further in the 54b that he said that key issue is masoi, that he is carrying a burden around the animal. The key point is that he maintained. The Tosfot said that he maintained to carry the donkey far away out of the Tchum Shabbat. So therefore, the prohibition is only rabbinic, and it's called mar'it ayin. So people should not see it and interpret it wrongly. You know, we take seriously the way that people interpreted our behavior. We have to be very careful what we are doing, so people should not misconstrue what we are doing. So that's the issue. The other one is the Yerushalmi, who said that the way that they settle this type of the saddle cloth around the animal, around the donkey, it's a problem, because we call it mishtamesh bebal chaim b'Shabbat. We're not supposed to use animal on Shabbat, and therefore the way that they settle it, it's isur. That's what the rabbis told us. But Rosh Yosef said that if it's already made, so you're allowed to go out. And it's all applied that it's not something like tightening in a double way. You know, tightening, if you do 2 times tightening, then it's an issue on Shabbat. Amar Rav Nachman, matniti namedaika. We learned this diuk from the Mishnah. We said that from the Mishnah. How? דקטני אין החמור יוצא במרדעת בזמן שאינה קשורה לו. He said that the donkey may not go out into the public domain on Shabbat with its saddle cloth when it is not tied to its back. Now, hey chedami. So the Gemara asks, what are the circumstances? Ileima she'ena kshura lo klal. If you tell me that the Mishnah referring to the where the saddle cloth is not tied to the animal at all, pshita, it's obvious, because otherwise the donkey will, it's forbidden for the donkey to go like that. Dilma naflale ve'atela atuye, because it may come to bring it and carry it 4 cubits in the public domain, and ve'atela atuye, and it's you come and carry it. El alav she'ina kshura me'erev Shabbat. You have to say that the animal did not tied from the Shabbat Eve. So Michlal Dereisha. So from here we learned at the beginning of the Mishnah, שקשורה לו מערב שבת שמע מינה, where the saddle cloth was tied to the animal from Shabbat Eve. That's what we basically conclude here. So we basically learn Raya for that what Shmuel said. Tosfot here have issue with that, and he's not so happy with this way of thinking. But again, what we learn from that is that we have a proof to what Shmuel said earlier, that it's all apply when the mirdat is tight in Erev Shabbat, before Shabbat. Tanya Me'achi. We learn also another braita that said, Chamor yotze b'mirdat bizman shekshura lo me'erev Shabbat. A donkey may go out on Shabbat with its saddle cloth when it's tied on an animal before Shabbat, from Shabbat Eve, ולא בעוקף אף על פי שקשורה לו מערב Shabbat. And basically we are concerned that the donkey will feel cold, and we want to warm up the donkey. So if you have this type of a ukaf, that this type of the saddle, even though it was tied to an animal on the Shabbat Eve. Rabban Shimon Megamliel Omer, because it's letzorech melacha, you need it for the purpose of this type of work, so it's not considering a burden. Now, Rabban Shimon Megamliel Omer, the donkey can go af beukaf bizman shekshura lo me'erev Shabbat. Says that you can go out with even with the saddle, as long as it's tied to the animal on the Shabbat Eve. ובלבד שלא יקשור לו מסריחן, providing that he not tie the strap with the saddle is fastened around the donkey's belly. And another thing, ובלבד שלא יפשור לו רצועה תחת זנבו, and provided that he does not pass a strap under the animal's tail, which is standard procedure when placing a burden on an animal. So what we understand? We understand that if the donkey go, for example, downhill, and you have this type of running a strap under the animal's tail, so everything is running, at the front of the animal, and it's a real problem. So he said, Ba'amine Ravasi Rabbi Natan Rabbi Chia Baravashi, Ma'u liten mardat al gabe chamor b'Shabbat. In other words, you want to put a mardat, a place, a saddling cloth on a donkey on Shabbat. Why you need to do it? You need to do it because it's too cold outside. It's a freezing cold, and when so is that the issue or not? So Amar le, Rav Chia Barashi said, mutar, he allowed. Amar le v'chi ma bein ze leukaf. He says, so you tell me, what's the difference between this and a saddle? The saddle, you said, is not allowed to move on Shabbat. So ishtik. So Rav Chia Barashi remained silent and did not answer. הייתי והוקף שעל גבי חמור לא ייתן תלם בידו, אלא מוליכה ומביאה בחצר ונופל מאליו. A saddle that is on donkey on Shabbat, and its owner wishes to remove it, he may not move it with his hand to remove it, rather he walks the animals back and forth in the courtyard, and the saddle falls on its own. So he said, Hashta litola martlo. So now, even in regard to removing the saddle that is already on the animal's back, you said no. Le'aniach mibaya. So prohibited one from placing the saddle on the animal, it's really necessary. So why he said it is forbidden? Amar le Rab Zera said to Rav Asim Rabbi Natan, Shavkei kirabei. I not disagree with you. That I agree that you are that it's forbidden to put the ukaf, the saddle, but he holds that is a difference between mirdat and ukaf, saddle cloth and saddle. The Amar Kirabei Svirale, he holds like his Rebbe, which is Rab. The Amar of Chia Barashi Amarav, Tolin Traskal Livema Beshabbat. He said that one may hang a basket with fodder around the neck of an animal on Shabbat, and by mean of that derive that we may place the saddle cloth on the animal back on Shabbat. V'kal v'chomer lemerdat, that you're allowed to do it. So he said, Uma hatam de mishum ta'anug, right? Because the animal have the joy from that. Shri, you allow, it's permitted. Hacha de mishum tsar lo kol sheken. So now placing on the saddle cloth, which is done to prevent the animal from suffering from the cold, so for sure it should be permitted. So Shmuel Amar, Mardat mutal traskal asur. He said, saddle cloth, fine, it's permitted. Basket with fodder, prohibited. Azal Rabbi Chia bar Yosef אמרה לשמטה דרב קמי דשמואל אמר לי, יחי אמר אבא לא ידע במי לשבתא ולא כלום. He said, actually he said that he knows nothing all about the matter of Shabbat, which means he was like unhappy. כי סליק רבי זרע אשכחל לרבי בנועם בן יפת יתיב וכאמר למשמד רבי יוחנן. He said, נותנים מרדת על גבי חמור בשבת. One may place a saddle cloth on a donkey on Shabbat. Amar lei, Rav Zera said to him, Yishar, it's like Yishar Koach, you have spoken well. V'chen tirgema Aryoch beBavel. So an Aryoch explained the matter the same way in Bavel. The nickname of Shmuel has never been fully explained. It's this constant Rashi explained that Aryoch, on the basis of foreign language root, Rikha meaning king. So Aryoch is the Judah the lion, is like Aryoch. Dechule alma miat mardat mutar, which means everyone agrees that the saddle cloth is permitted. But the question arises, Mishna meukaf. What's this? Is a saddle cloth different from a saddle? Shanehatam de'efshar denafel mimela. So the difference is that over there it may turns that the Aryoch can fall by himself. So so other thing like Mirdat, we don't put this Chumrah. But other than that, we put the Chumrah. So now we go now to understand the whole process. We have here, number one, the issue of Netilat Ukaf. You're taking the saddle cloth on the animal and you put it. So anything that you cannot remove without using your hand, so everybody agree that you cannot carry it. Point one. Point two, Tliyat Traskal, to hang this saddle cloth. So Rav hold that because you need to use your hand to put it, and it's for the sake of the animal, it's allowed. Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan hold because it's only for the deriving joy of the animal and not to savor from sorrow, so it's not enough to allow. Then we have the whole idea of putting a saddle on an animal. So it's basically a controversy between Rav Shmuel Rabbi Yochanan. Then putting the saddle, Mardat, everyone said that they're allowed to do it because it's helping saving the donkey from great sorrow, and you cannot put it without using your hands. So that's basically the gradation with this. So they said, Rav Papa gave a different teruts, and he said, Kan lechamema, kan letzanena. Here's the sages permitted placing a saddle cloth on a donkey to warm the animal. And there, it's the sages prohibited because it's cool to animal. Lechamema it letzar. To warm the animal is permitted because otherwise experience discomfort. לצננה לתלצה, we have to settle the animal is prohibited because the man does not experience discomfort from the excessive heat. והיינו דאמרי אינשי, and that's what the people used to say, חמרה, אפילו בתקופת כמוז, קריר עלי. חמור, a donkey, even the time, the season of Tammuz, like summer season, is cold. So seeing the animal warmth is more important. Now, there is a difference between Rashi and the Tosfot, Dibur Matchil Deshmaya. Anyway, there's a few different avenues to understand it. So one is to understand that there is a stages. One is putting the cloth. One is the taking and putting the traskal, and the third one is putting the saddle. That's like mardat, that they allow both by both opinion. Now he said, Meitivei לא יצא הסוס בזנב שועל ולא בזערורית שתלויה בין עיניו. So the horse cannot go to the public with the tail of a fox. You have any idea why? Why the place is a talisman to ward off the evil eye? Have you ever heard that?
I have not, but have now.
Evil eye, Kabbalistic.
Yes, they're afraid of evil eye from the horse. ולא בזערורית בין עיניו. And not, and the horse may not go out with a string of red wool that is hanging between his eyes. Again, it's our own man. לא יצא הזהב בכיס שלו. Okay, the person who have a semen discharge cannot go יקבל זוב. ולא עיזים שבכיס שבדדיהם. And not a goat with the paunch of their udders, so that they will not be scratched by stones. ולא פרה בחסום שבפיה, nor a cow with the muzzle that it's on its mouth. And he said, ולא סייחים בתרסקלין שבפיהם לרשות הרבים, and not falls with baskets of fodder that are around their mouth into a public domain, ולא בהמה בסנדל ברגליה, and not an animal with metal shoes that are on the feet, you know, like you see in the horses. ולא בקמיה, אבל בי שהוא מומחה. There are people who carry in the pocket קמיה, is like amulet. So the amulet that's placed on the animal to promote a good health, even if the amulet is proven effective. Right? So he said, וזו חומר באדם בהמה, which means this is the stricture that applies animal beyond strictures that apply to people, which means a person is permitted to go out into public domain with an amulet that was proved effective. Now, he said, אבל יוצאו בעגל שעל גבי המכה, and animals may go out with bandage that is on the wound, ובקשישין שעל גבי השבר, and with springs that are on a broken bone, so it will heal properly, ובשליה המדולדלת בה, and with afterbirth hanging from its womb, ופורקקים לה זוג בצווארה, and one may plug the bell hanging from the animal's neck to prevent his ringing, ומטיילת עמו בחצר, and the animals may walk with it in the courtyard, which is a private domain, but not in a public domain. קטן מיהת, we learn in the Braita, ולא סייחים בתרס קלים שבפיהם לרשות הרבים, nor falls with baskets or fodder that was around their mouth into the public domain. So what we understand? לרשות הרבים מודלה בחצר שפיר דמי. To the public domain, one may not go to for the basket in the mouth. However, to a courtyard, they may well walk with the basket of father. Says, my love, bigdolim umishum tanug. What is the reference to large fall around whose necks, father? Basket that are hanging for the pleasure. It's for him tanug. He said, lo, bigtanim umishum tsar. It's referring to a small fold, and it's to prevent the discomfort, which is the leg of young foal are long and its neck is short. So consequently, eating from the ground is different. Hanging the fodder basket around the neck enables to eat without bending down. So now the GEMARA add, this is also precise. לא בקטנים משום צער, די כלם נקטן, דומה לקמא אשמה מינה. It's precise in language of the תוספתא, that it teaches the case of the fall is similar to an amulet, that it's worn by healing purposes. So we learn Shema Mina, we learn from it that that's the correct understanding.
Okay.
53b, top of the page. אמר מר ולא בקמע אף על פי שהוא מומחה. So this is a very interesting sugya. Now we're talking about amulet. When I was in a hospital after the accident, as you know, I had 5 years ago a jet ski accident. Another guy just lost control and hit me. Anyway, so it was a rabbi that came there, and he offered me a amulet, like he wrote on the parchment the name of Hashem, and he said, if you have it and you carry it in your pocket, you will be protected. Sound a little bit superstitious, no? But anyway, here they take it seriously. They said, if someone is expert, and those amulets prove 3 times that really protected or healed people, which again, you can doubt it in some ways. So he said, so therefore you can go out. Now, the ha'anan tnan, we learn later in page 60a, velo bekamea shelo mumche. They say that the person should not go to a public domain with a amulet that was written by someone who's not an expert. What is the expert? Remember, what is the expert in amulet? What did we said? The amulet that proved 3 times that healed people. Then it's considering and getting from an expert. So as long as you don't have it, so what we derive from this Mishnah? That if you have a kamea, an amulet, that was written by someone who is not an expert, a person cannot go on Shabbat. Ha mumche shapir dami. So it means, what do you derive from that? That if the amulet was written by an expert, it's fine, right? So what we derive from that? If you're talking about a person, so the kamea, the amulet, is not considering a burden, right? Now, how come when it's come to animals, it's different? Why you say that in animal cannot go with that? So what we understand simply that that people must probably putting an amulet of protection around the animals. Did you ever heard that? Achaname here that the animal cannot go with amulet she'eno mumche, that is not written by an expert.
Can amulet like a The mezuzah, why you use it wrong. So
Yes, but that's not the
by
mezuzah.
expert. That's considered
That's
like
not the mezuzah. Emulate is like, I'll give you an example. At the 11th century, it was a great Kabbalistic rabbi. The problem is he lived like Mozart. He lived a few hundred years before the proper time. And his name is Rabbi Avraham Abulafia. And Rabbi Abulafia, he used to have which is called Torat Tzerufim. He knew how to take numbers and letters and combine it and make it as a esoterical combinations. And you are mathematicians, so you appreciate that. He took every name and every number. For example, David ben Chaim Leib. And he took all the numbers involved with this and combined them and did all kind of things, and he come out with a lot of formulations. Now, God has many names. So you take the formulation, I'll just give you a very abbreviation of this. Take the formulation of God's name, and you take from some early Kabbalistic writings, name of Malachim, of like a heavenly entities, like those names mentioning in the book of Ezekiel, etc., etc. And you take a parchment, small parchment, like those parchment that used for Torah. You put the names of the person. You put Magen David. You put the God's name. You put the names back and forth, which means the names of the person and the names of those angels back and forth. And you wrap it up with 2 wraps, and you let the person hold it. Now, in some cases, they put an oath, and they said, on the name of all these angels, we warn all these demons and other entities not to come close to these entities, not to hurt that entities, etc., etc., etc. You have to believe in that to comprehend that. But that's basically the amulet. So the GEMARA divided. It's a differentiation between something that can prove that it really works versus something that you don't know. How do you know it? So they said if it's three of them works, it's a proof that it works. Is that correct for nowadays? I can tell you. There are so many charlatans out there. So I can't say everyone, chas v'shalom, but there are many. In Israeli language, we used to call them Baba Kama. You know, those, they have an inflation of Baba. People who pretend to be Kabbalistics and they give you all kind of blessings, and that's going to happen to you if you know. So, there are some of them, they call them the Baba Kesef. Either they want the money or Kama, how much is it? You know?
So you're not supposed to prognosticate the future, right?
You're not supposed to know.
So the one that was saying like the Kabbalist is prognosticating what might happen. Is that wrong?
Yeah, but it's not no. It's not prognostication in that sense. What happened with the Kamea, they give it, let's say, I'm just tracing a scenario. Let's say that Mrs. Eve, she is going to next week to delivery room. Or he going, Mr. Jeff going tomorrow to a very serious mission. So you concerned, he's going now to Afghanistan, he's going to now to war areas, to Gaza, who knows. So you write this, not you, but expert writes this, emulate. Now the GEMARA said that something that we take seriously, it's something that quote unquote works 3 times. Either protection or healing, etc. I keep saying you can take it or leave it, but that's what they said. So the GEMARA said, "Ve'aha afal pishu mumche katane." We learn that a person can go with a kamea even that it's an expert. So how you tell me earlier that it's a possibility to have this emulate with someone who's not considering an expert. So they said, Mumche la'adam velo mumche la'behema. you have a fellow that he is expert of writing emulate for people, but not for animals. Look, 30 years ago, if you tell me that in every supermarket is going to be aisle or 2 aisles for animals, I say that you're mishuge. And nowadays, it's normal. In every giant or whatever food chain, you see, right, an aisle for animals, correct? So now it's a huge business. So you may say that someone can write emulat of protection for animals, writing all these type of names, which I'll never start up, right? Names of God, name of angels, wrapping it up, wrapping around the animals, and they say that that's for protection, that no demons or no bad luck or bad things will happen to animals. So the GEMARA answered and they said, we are talking about someone who is expert with people, but is not expert with animals. ומי איכא מומחה לאדם ולא אבו מומחה לבהמה? Come on. You tell me that there is a guy that he is expert only for people, but he's not for the animals? It's obviously the Ritva said that men and animals have a different nature. For example, even they have a sickness, the reaction or the contagiousness of men is very different than animals. So if you tell me that this protection is against, for example, certain diseases, that diseases is very different from animals to people. How you even juxtapose? So Ritva said that here we speak about expert, that he is expert in different diseases. So it's called Itmache Gavra. The Gemara said, Ein Adam de Itlei Mazala, that the person has an angel in heaven that protected him. So the person have someone like that. So that's what happened. Mesayale. So we bring a proof that this amulet will help for healing. Mesayale be'ema deret lemaza lo mesayale. That the animals doesn't have the muzzle, so it doesn't help that amulet. So they ask, what do you mean by saying that it is a stricture that apply to animals beyond the strictures that apply to people? So they said, Mi savarta kamyakai asandalkai. It's not speaking about the status of amulet, it's referring to shoe. An animal may go out with a shoe on Shabbat, but a person may, in other words, animal cannot go, but a person can go. So they said, Tashma, so come and see from the Braita, Sakin u mefarkesin. A person can anoint with oil, do sicha, and also remove, he smear an oil and scrape off the scab on Shabbat for a person. לאדם, ואין שכים ומפרסים לבהמה. But you cannot smear an oil and scrape off a scab from an animal. My love, the kamaka, this is not referring to a case when there is a wound, and he smears on oil and scrape the scab due to the discomfort caused by the wound. He said, no. He says, umishum tsar, that the wound is already seized and healed. Lo digmar makar umishum tanug. So it's he smears oil and scrap due to the pleasure caused by the treatment. Tashma. Be'ema sha'chazat dam. So if it's an animal that's suffering from a heart congestion, which means that restrict the blood supply, and temperature was risen. You may not stand it with water that cool off. Adam shachazodam, on the other hand, with regard to a person suffering from heart congestion, מעמידים אותו במים כדי שיסתנן. So one may stand him in the water that he will cool off. אמרו לה גזירה משום שחיקת סממנים. That's crucial. Ula said that this is a decree, prohibited all the healing on Shabbat, because it's the gzera, it's like a decree that one come to grind the ingredients used in preparation of medicine. Yache Adam Name, Adam nireh k'meiker. If so, to some degree should also apply in the case of person. So they said in the case of person, it's appeared to that if he entered the water merely to cool, to cool off, not necessarily to cure an illness. So they said, Yache Be'ema Name nireh k'meiker. So an animal too, it's typically never the water to one cool off. So what's the difference? So they said, Ein Meiker Lavhema. Usually you don't do that with animal. An animal, it's appear that merely cool, but an animal does not typically enter the water on its own to cool off. So that's the story. The Gemara asks, do we really issue a decree for an animal? והתניא, we learn in the Braita, הייתה עומדת בחוץ לתחום וקורא לה והיא באה. If the animal standing behind the Shabbat limit, the situation that is prohibited to go fetch. Okay? So they said, קורא לה והיא באה. He may call the animal and it will come to him on its own. ולא גזרינן, do not issue a decree, דילמה אטלה תויה, that prohibit the animal, calling the animal, lest he come to bring it himself. So it means that the sages did not issue a decree in a case when one could incur a loss and there is no actual transgression committed. ולא גזרין אני מלאתוי, והמערבים קראו אותה כשהייתה תחום שלה מובלה בתוך שום שלו. That the תחום, the animal's Shabbat limit was subsumed with the limit of its owner. So in other words, is one at the top of the other. So the Braita allowed to put the animals, even its go by the 4 amot, 4 cubit, Reshut Harabim. So it is a huge difference between Rashi and other Meforshim how to take this. Because if the animals go in Tchum Shabbat is the issue, but here, if you take, for example, sick animal and put it in the cold water, so it's different, because it's considering a הפסד. נחמן ביצחק אמר, שחיקת סמנים גופת הנעיר, אבל נחמן ביצחק said that the decree due to the crushing herbs is itself a dispute between the Tanaim. The Tanya, במה שאכלה קרשינים, if there is animal that ate vatch, which is cause the life-threatening because it's very unhealthy, לא ירצנה בחצר בשביל שתתרפא. He cannot put it in a courtyard to loosen the ball due to the decree of prohibiting healing. רבי יושע מתיר, רבי יושע לאו, דרש רבא הלכה כרבי יושע, רב עשה הלכה כקודם כרבי יושע, אמר, לא יוצא הזר בכיס שלו, ולא יזם בכיס שבלעדיהם. He said that the zav cannot go and punch and prevent his clothes from becoming soiled by his missions, nor goats with the pouch that was the other. והתניא יוצאות ישים בכיס שבלעדיהם. We learn from Braita that the goats may go out with the pouch that is in the other. אמר רב יהודה לא קשה עד בידה כלא מלאק. Here is when he tightening it, what is not. רב יוסף אמר תנאי שקלת לעלמא. תנאי, you remove the תנאים from the world. תתנן, העזים יוצאים צרורות. We learned that the she-goat may go out with the other bound. רבי יוסי עושה בכולם חוץ מן הרכילות הכבונות. רבי יוסי prohibits the animals that going out with all these items, that he considers them burden, except for the ewes that was כבונות. רבי יהודה אומר, עזים יוצאות צרורות לייבש אבל לא לחלב. They can go bound to dry, but not to conserve the milk. Because when they're bound loosely, that's what happened. So he said, Vibai Tema is another interpretation. Hava Rabbi Yehuda, both follow Rabbi Yehuda, V'lokasha kan yabesh kan lechalev. One is to dry the milk supply, the other one is to conserve the milk. Tanya אמר רבי יהודה מעשה בעזים בטון, הנתחיות של ידיהם גסים ועשו להם כיסים גדול שירסו בידיהם. Remember what we said, that in that house it was a goat that they put a special Antioch with others were especially large, and they will drag along the ground, and they made pouches for them so that the others will not scratched. תנו רבנן מעשה מאחד שמתה אשתו וניחלו בן לינוק. Someone, God forbid, the wife just died after delivery, and is a baby, the baby need to nurse, and is no mother to nurse him. ולא היה לו שכר מניקה ליתן. He doesn't have the money to pay for another woman to nurse the baby. ונעשה לו נס ונפתחו לדדים כשני דדי אישה והניק בו. And a miracle was performed on his behalf, and he developed
Breasts?
breast, like the two breasts of women. And he nursed his son. Did you ever heard that?
I heard that story before. But
Never. Did you heard that? You? No? Yes? You heard. You heard. Okay. Amar of Yosef said, Bo You see, we have a lot of interesting stuff. בואו ראה כמה גדול אדם זה שנעשה לו נס כזה. Come and see how great is this person that have performed such a miracle on his behalf. אמר לו אביי said to him, come on! It's the opposite, on the contrary. אדרבה. כמה גרוע האדם זה שנשתלו שדרי בראשית. How dishonorable is this person that the order of creation was altered on his behalf. A miracle was indeed performed on his behalf. However, it was performed in a demeaning and unpleasant manner. In other words, he doesn't have the gate of income that he can pay another woman to nurse the baby. But God, in a way, needs to turn the whole creation to let man does that. And the Maharsha said that it's reduced from the good deeds that he did. In other words, it's like paying him a reward for one of his good deeds in this world. But we learn another thing. Amar Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda said, בואו ראה כמה קשים מזונותיו של אדם. Come and see how a person to make a living, a person's sustenance is so difficult. Why? שנשתנו עליו סדרי בראשית. That the creation had been altered on his behalf, which is apparently either them providing him a source of financial support. So because he needs to help his son, that's it. So the Maharal explained that the key point with making a living is that when it's come naturally. But if you have a situation that it's not naturally, then it's above creation in the sense that you need to, when you see that it's rough and hardly come in and comes so hardly, etc., you have to make a self-search. Because the way that it's written here, it should not happen. It should be nature. Because think about it. The GEMARA said at the end of Kiddushin, look at the animals. They do not have any college degrees, yet they're all making a living. They all have food. Right? They don't need to cheat anybody. They don't need to take anything from anyone. They don't need to arrange banks or businesses. Right? They make a nice living, all these animals. So he said, אמר רב יהודה, בואו ראה כמה קשים בזנותם של האדם שלו, נשתלו עליו סדרי בראשית. אמר רב נחמן, תדע, you should know, the מתרחש ניסה, that it happens sometimes that in order to save life is miracle, velo ibru melzone. That, in other words, even that there is a miracle, that it's not necessarily happen all the times, and it's not happen for a food that was miraculously created in a person's home. תנו רבנן מעשה באדם אחד שנשא אישה גידמת ולא הכיר בה עד יום מותה. How do you like that? How do you like that? No? He marries some indigent person, right? Person that very, very small person, woman, and didn't realize that one earned that day until the day he passed. So Rav said, Amar Rav, בוא ראה כמה צנועה אישה זו שלא הכיר בבעלה. Look how modest this woman that the husband never knew that. אמר לו רב חייא, זו דרכה בכך. Rav Chiya said to him, that's the typical conduct for her, as a woman typically cover themselves. אלא כמה צנוע אדם זה שלא הכיר באשתו. Go opposite. Rather, they said that this modest man was so modest that did not recognize this in his wife. זכרים יוצאים לבובים. So we learn in the Mishnah that rams may go out לבובים. You know, לבובים, we say that it's some commentary explained that לבובים refers to, like the Meiri said, that the cloth and the other ornaments placed over the heart. My לבובים. So what's the meaning of לבובים? Rav Huna, Amar Rav Huna tutri. Rav Huna said tied in pairs. My mashma da לבובים לשנה דקרוב ההוא. דכתיב לי בבתיני אחותי כלה. They said, what's the infer of the word לבובים? So it's a term of closeness, tiedness. It's written in Song of Songs, chapter 4. You have drawn me near libavtini, my sister, my bride, אחותי כלה. אולה אמר, אולה said, או שקושרים להם כנגד ליבם כשלא ישלפו עליהם זאבים. לבובים, it's referred to an animal's hide that one ties over the hearts, which is lev of rams, so that the wolves did not attack them. זאבים, הזכרים הנפלי, הנקבות לא נפלי. The Gemara asks, do wolves attack rams but not attack ewes, not the female? So they said, misum de mazge bereish edra. The Gemara explained, because the male walk at the head of the flock. So they said, וזאבים בראש אדרה נפל בסוף אדרה נפל, the wolf come only to the top, not the bottom. So they said, אלא משום דשמני, that they pray specifically for ram because it's plump. So they said, בנקבות לקשמני, you don't tell me that there is a female ooze that, you know, have plumps, that's a fat, heavy. ותו מיד לבינהן אליהן. And also, how do you differentiate between the two? So they said, between this wolf and the other wolf. So he said, אלא משום דזקפי חותמי ומסקי קידבו. Because the male move out the chotam, the head, and raise the noses and walk while they looking at both sides. Remember, they have in both sides. The wolf think that they are preparing to attack them. So, and therefore they come, they run after them. That's the animal's reflection, intuition. The third interpretation of לבובין, רב נחמן בר יצחק אמר, או שקושרים להם תחת זכותן כשלא יעלו הנקבות. It's apply that they refer to animal hides that are tied under the male organ, so they will not mount the females. So he said, Mimai. How do you know? So he said, Midiktane seva verchilim yotzin shchuzot. You said later that the ewes may go out shchuzot. And you said shchuzot in Talmud Yerushalmi, they cite two terms, either shuzot or shchuzot. So it's that it's like prepare for use, etc. or night. So they said מהי שחוזות שאוחזין העלייה שלהם מלמעלה כדי שיעלו עליהם זכרים? One, in order to seduce the male, the male mount more easily, or reisha כדי שלא יעלו נקבות וסב כדי שלא יעלו זכרים. The first clause refers to an action undertaken so that the male will not mount the females, and the later clause it's an action undertaken so the male will mount them. Ma'ish mashna da'ai shchuzot lishna degiluyahu, from where we may infer that the word shchuzot in term to exposure. So they said ichtiv because it's written in the book of Proverbs, ve'inei isha likrato shit zona u'tzurat lev. They said, behold, they met a woman with the attribute of a harlot and with willy of heart. So that means shchuzot can be interpreted as in a sense acronym of the word shitzona attrites to a harlot, which is a letter of taf and hey, which are similar in form, interchanged. Vehu shekshura lo merev Shabbat. A donkey may only go out on Shabbat and it's in saddlecloth if the saddlecloth were tied from the Shabbat Eve. Velo beukaf, a donkey may not go out on Shabbat with a saddle, even the saddle were tied to animal from Shabbat Eve. And now we said, ma'u liten mardat al gabe chamor b'Shabbat. It's permitted to place a saddlecloth on a donkey on Shabbat, provided that it's remain in a private domain. However, one may not tie the saddlecloth to an animal. Shabbat, the Mishnah said, even with a makeshift knot. Now we say, ukaf shel gabe chamor lo yitatera biyado. One may not move a saddle on donkey on Shabbat with his hand, even if sick to remove it. Rather, he can unite the rope securing the saddle to the animal and walk the animal back and forth in a courtyard until the saddle fall off. Klaskal, which is a basket, so the Rambam said in Chod Shabbat chapter 20, one may not hang a basket with the fodder around the neck of a donkey on Shabbat because it has a large status of a burden, and that's the Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan. Now, lo yetze asus bezanav. A horse may neither go out on a fox tail. An animal may not go out on Shabbat with a non-essential ornament, like a fox tail. V'lo yizim shebichis shevladem v'lo para b'chasom shebefia. Goats may not go out on Shabbat with a punch on the udders to protect them from scratches. A cow may not go out with a muzzle in the place and its mouth to prevent it from grazing in the other people's field. Biktanim mishurotza, one may hang a fodder basket around the neck of a foal that suffered when they're forced to eat from the ground. However, why not take a foal with the basket into a public domain? That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 305. Now we talk about kameot, mumche la'adam ve'lo mumche la'behema. An amulet that is effective for a person is not assumed to be effective for an animal until it is tested. Consequently, an animal may not go out with an amulet unless it is established of being effective for animals. That's the Rambam in Chod Shabbat, chapter 20. Sachin u'mefarzesim le'adam ve'en sachin u'mefarzesim le'behema. One may smear an oil and scrape a scrub off a person's body on Shabbat, even it's only for pleasure. And leaving a scab will not cause pain, but not, you don't do that for the animals. Behema she'achla karshinim, it says if an animal ate a large amount of vet, which create a lot of a climbing plant from large family and it's now suffering, it's permitted to run at about the courtyard to loosen its balls, so there's no room to concern that it's thereby violating the rabbinic decree of prohibiting healing activities on Shabbat. Now we said that to dry or to conserve the milk. Goats may go out with the udders bound to dry the milk supply. However, it's prohibited for the it's done in conserve the milk and prevent dripping onto the ground. And the last halacha of today's charim yotzim lovim achirim yotzu shchulot. Rams may go out with the hide tied under the male organs to prevent them from mounting females. And ewes may go out with the tails back so that the males can more easily mount them. So that's the Rambam in Chod Shabbat chapter 20 in Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 305.
נפשי es Hashem